Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I am Josh and my co-host Mike. Today we have a good amount to cover. We're going to recap the wildcard round of the NFL playoffs. We're going to give our studs and duds, talk about each game individually. Then we are going to move on to previewing the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, preview those four games, give you our picks for each game, and then do our best bets at the end of the show. But before we get started, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it very much. We will start with the Texans beating the Chargers 32-12. Very disappointing performance here from the Chargers. Both O-lines in this game played very noticeably bad. It was the story of the entire game, but Herbert handled it way worse than CJ Stroud did. In the first quarter, it felt like the Chargers were going to capitalize and blow out Houston. They had a couple great opportunities. They had to settle for two field goals, which really felt like, okay, we're sitting here after the first quarter, it's 6-0. Feels like the Chargers should be up by at least 14 right now. This looks like it could be concerning. Ended up being very concerning. Texans defense has been so good all year. We've been talking about them all year, especially in the middle of the season. I remember saying over and over, this defense is playing out of their minds right now. If this offense can just be a resemblance of what they were last year, this could be a really good team. They never really got there offensively, but their defense is good enough and they're able to carry them in this game. Herbert, he throws four picks after just throwing three in the entire regular season. Hard to think of a time, in my opinion, at least this year, where a QB was more flustered, minus Sam Darnold in the past 2 weeks. But it was really bad for Herbert in this game. Chargers were just 3 for 11 on third down, turned it over four times, had just one trip to the red zone. It's really hard to compete in a football game when you have that bad of offensive stats. This is very disappointing, a letdown game for the Chargers here, but everybody counted the Texans out. They looked to really thrive on that. They thrived off Rex Ryan's words and in the pregame, and they got the W.
Yeah, they seem to thrive off it. CJ Stroud wasn't absolutely terrible in this game. Joe Mixon, when the Texans have a rushing attack, their offense is better, and we saw that in this game. He did have 100 yards on the ground against this Chargers defense, which was great all season. They get to score 32 points. After that first quarter, like you said, it was 6-0. The under looked great, but the Texans really took over, scored 32 points in just the last three quarters. Disappointing from Herbert. Four interceptions, was just not good in this game at all. They didn't have the rushing attack that you wanted them to have. They only had 50 yards on the ground. J.K. Dobbins only 9 carries for 26 yards. The Texans defense was phenomenal in this game. They stopped the run. Just all around great performance. We saw Will Anderson Jr. get a sack and a half. He's really emerging as one of the best pass rushers. We've seen that all year. And just a really good win for the Texans team. And now they get a chance at the Chiefs in the second round. They've never been to the conference championship. We'll talk about that soon. But as kind of disappointing as the regular season was, this playoff win puts them in a spot that the exact spot they pretty much wanted to be in. And a great game from Nico Collins as well. 7 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. And on the other side, Lad McConkey was really the only Chargers offense at all. He almost had 200 yards receiving, 197 yards and a touchdown. He does have that massive 86-yard touchdown, so he was great in this game. They need to get Herbert just another weapon or two. Really, it's just McConkey and then J.K. Dobbins out of the backfield. But if the run is stuffed, they really don't have much outside of McConkey. So they're going to have to look for that in the offseason, and just a great win for the Texans at home, especially.
Yeah, and that McConkey touchdown completely inflated Herbert's stats too. He would have looked
Yeah.
significantly worse if he didn't have that touchdown. And we did talk about pregame the Texans' history where I guess they do win a ton of wild card games and they always lose in the divisional. Like you said, they've never made the championship. So we will see if that trend continues here. But we'll move on here to the Ravens beating the Steelers 28-14. Pretty embarrassing effort from the Steelers here. Russ was not horrible in this game. He just wasn't able to situationally find first downs in this game. Steelers are a historically great running team, and they need to find that identity. They for much of the year they had that identity, and here they lose their rushing battle 299-29 in the playoffs, which is just unacceptable from a Steelers team. I know Steelers fans can't be happy about that. Neither team in this game turned the ball over, but Baltimore's ability to hold on to the ball for 40 minutes of this game just made it so tough for Pittsburgh. Ravens ended up going 3 for 4 in the red zone, 75%. That's great. The Steelers never made it to the red zone in this game, which is absurd. Though the Ravens may be in trouble without Zay Flowers, I thought that could have been a significant problem for them against the Steelers secondary, who isn't great, but if you have a receiver down, they could shut down some guys. But Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson run for 260 yards in this game. There's not much you could do if you're the Steelers. It looked like they wanted to just let Lamar cook for the early part of this game, but when you have a guy like Derrick Henry, it makes it really hard to make a decision for teams, and that's the most dangerous part of this offense. The Ravens, they got up early. They just held on for dear life here. Now they set up a matchup with Buffalo in the next round. I do want to credit the Ravens. I want to see what the stats are before I misquote it, but let me see. Just three penalties for 14 yards in this game. That's phenomenal for the Ravens. That's something they've struggled with all year. Discipline, not committing penalties, killing themselves with penalties, and they go into their first playoff game just 14 penalty yards. They're able to beat a division rival very handedly and win the division series against Pittsburgh and set up the matchup that we're all waiting for against Buffalo.
Yeah, that's the big matchup. Obviously, next week, Sunday, late afternoon. Very excited. Lamar Jackson was good in this one. 175 yards and two touchdowns passing. Gets 81 yards on the ground rushing. Just a solid performance. These Ravens have really started to finally start beating the Steelers. That has been their biggest weakness in recent years. But back-to-back wins now and back-to-back games is big for him. Derrick Henry was obviously fantastic on the ground. 186 yards and two touchdowns. They didn't really have to do too much through the air because he was just dominant on the ground. And the Steelers, like you said, this late game skid where they've lost these couple games in a row, 4 or 5 in a row, the rushing attack just has not been there. Najee Harris hasn't been good. Jalen Warren really hasn't been good. And I would expect them to probably shape up that rushing room next year a little bit. Who knows what they'll do at quarterback with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Russ's stats look decent, 270 yards, two touchdowns, but he really wasn't great in this game. George Pickens is still really their only big receiving weapon. He had 5 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. He was solid, but nice win by the Ravens. They got it done at home, and the Steelers they just have a interesting predicament because they're just stuck in the purgatory. They've been stuck there for a long time. I think Mike Tomlin's up to 6 or 8 straight losses in the
Eight, I believe. Yeah.
playoffs. We see Arthur Smith interviewing for the Bears head coaching job today, and the Jets head coaching job tomorrow. So maybe he'll be gone. Who knows? But good win for the Ravens.
Yeah, the Steelers are definitely in a brutal spot. What do? You have a guy in Mike Tomlin who would get hired immediately, most likely. I mean, people have been saying that for years. He would get hired immediately. At this point, with so many little job openings and a decent amount of good candidates, maybe he wouldn't get hired early. I'm not sure if he gets a job this year. We thought the same thing with Bill Belichick. Oh, if they get rid of Bill Belichick, he'll be hired in seconds. And we see that didn't happen. So I
Yeah.
don't know if that guaranteed would happen with Mike Tomlin. I don't know if I'm even saying they should fire him. I don't even have really a direct take on this whole situation. I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either you get rid of him and it's who do you hire over him, or you keep him and you continue to be in the same cycle of overachieving a little bit in the regular season, but never being good enough to win playoff games. So yeah, they're in a brutal spot. Russ is a free agent this year. We'll see if they re-signed him. Maybe they rock with Justin Fields. Maybe they go sign a free agent. Maybe they try to draft a guy later in the first round. It's I honestly, I have no word for the Steelers. I don't know what they should do at this point.
Yeah, me neither. They don't have enough to win a Super Bowl, but they have too much talent to be bad. I mean, TJ Watt, I think had about like 100 plays without registering a stat or something right now.
Yeah,
He
he
had
hasn't
a
had a great year.
he had a very rough end of the season, just like this entire Steelers team. So
Yeah, which is not encouraging going on to the next season. But
no,
um, Bulls finish off the AFC here with the Bills beating the Broncos 31-7. Broncos had an electric first possession of this game where they had a long touchdown from Bo Nix to who caught that one again? I forget. Troy Franklin caught the long touchdown for them. Bo Nix's stats might look not good on paper, but honestly, he wasn't that bad. He had no run game in this game. His pass catchers consistently kept dropping passes, put him in bad spots. He made a couple good plays with his legs, but there just wasn't much he could do. I don't put this game on Bo, really. Broncos missed a field goal that would have tied up this game at halftime. The Bills, after that, go on to score on every possession of the second half, allowed 0 points in the second half defensively, and really shut down this Broncos team. Despite losing by so much, it felt like the Broncos were playing well at times in this game. The drops, like I said, killed any positive progression they had on those drives when they were trying to at least maybe go save the cover for us. They just weren't able to because they weren't able to put drives together. The Bills, they were able to hold on to the ball for much of this game. 42 minutes of TOP for them in this game, which is huge. giving the Broncos really no chance to recover. It's hard to come back in a game like this when you have a team that just beats you down, holds the ball on for 42 minutes, and still scores 31 points in this game. Very impressive win for the Bills. They moved to 9-0, I believe, at home this year, which is super impressive. They stay at home for this Ravens game that we're going to be picking here in a little bit. Um, I'm back and forth on that game, but we'll get to that one at the end of the pod. But overall, this is there's a couple teams here in these playoffs that I feel like have positive outlooks, even if they lose in the first round. A lot of these teams, like the Broncos, who did lose, of course, the Commanders, if they would have lost, I think they would have been fine going forward. And then there's a group of teams where we'll talk about a couple later with the Packers and the Vikings, and then there's the Chargers in this last game that it's like, yeah, maybe you did have an overachieving season. I guess maybe not the Packers, but it's tough to lose in the first round the way you did. I don't feel that way for the Broncos. I think they're in a good spot and they overachieved this year. They have a rookie quarterback who I think is really, really good in Bo Nix. So we'll see how he does in year two.
Yeah, they did have a overachieving season. We did not expect them to make the playoffs at all. Um, and in the offseason, I think they can get some more weapons for Bo Nix to help improve this offense even more. The defense throughout the season was very good for him. It wasn't as good in this game, but it's been pretty hard to stop Josh Allen and the Bills offense all year, especially at home. He had a great game. They had a great game on the ground. James Cook has 120 rushing yards on only 23 carries. Josh Allen, he gets 46 yards on the ground. This offense is very hard to stop. They went undefeated at home in the regular season. They dominate this game here. It was a nice start for the Broncos. We saw Bo Nix get off to that big throw early, but after that, the Denver passing attack, the Denver offense as a whole, really did not have much going on. They were kept under 100 rushing yards, and that then they couldn't pass the ball. So the Bills defense had another good game at home. They've been better at home. We saw earlier in the season them get dominated by the Ravens. That was in Baltimore. They're going to get this game in Buffalo, so that's going to be big. Denver had an electric fake punt that they were
They
able to
did.
convert, but then they had to punt again, and Riley Dixon still pinned the Bills inside, I think, the 5 yard line.
Yeah.
So he might have been the best player of the game for the Broncos, but they have a lot to look forward to. Bo Nix looked good this year. They need him to get more confident, start throwing that deep ball a little bit more, because when the deep ball's been there, he's been on target with it. Um, but a good year for Sean Payton and Bo Nix.
Okay, moving on here to the NFC, Eagles beating the Packers 22-10. Neither team looked really good in this game, in my opinion. The Packers, they fumble on the opening kick, put them in a hole early. Jordan Love ends up throwing zero touchdowns, three interceptions in this game. Sad way to go out for him. He is maybe he's the guy. Maybe he isn't. He's been great at sometimes. Other times he looks terrible. We've seen one playoff win in 2 years from him. Granted, they were the 7th seed both years, but you're gonna have to start seeing some divisional success or success against good teams for the Packers as they go 0-6 against the Eagles, Vikings, and Lions this year. 6 of their 7 losses, and then of course that Week 18 loss to the Bears would be their last. Packers end up losing Jaden Reed and Dobbs in this game, making their top three receivers all out at one point in this game. It's tough to succeed in that situation, especially when you're going against a secondary that's played as well as the Eagles have played in the back half of the season. When you have your top three receivers out, that's just, of course, a tough place to be. Eagles offensively, their pass offense was not good in this game at all. Like it hasn't really been all year, but Saquon was good enough to get away with that. Eagles were 2 for 11 on third down. That is going to happen when you have no passing offense. You can't. The Eagles are able to run it on 3rd and 9 if they want to, and they have a decent chance to get it, especially if they can get in with 1 or 2 yards of touch push. But 2 for 11 on third down tells me that you had to pass on third down, and you do not have the passing offense that's capable of that. Eagles win the turnover battle 4-0, and this was still a semi-close game because of their inability to pass the ball. But for Philly, it's survive and advance. This game just doesn't make me any more comfortable about this team than I was before. But they have the talent that they should be able to beat these teams, especially a team that's the 7th seed down all three of their best receivers.
Yeah, the injuries to the Packers receivers was very unfortunate. We saw Jaden Reed go down with a shoulder injury. Romeo Dobbs go down with what looked like it was probably a concussion, and that one was pretty scary. And we talked
With the
about it
Guardian
last
cap.
week. Yeah, with the Guardian cap too. He was down for a long time too. That was kind of scary, but we saw last week Christian Watson tear his ACL, so they were down their top three receivers. That didn't help, but still Jordan Love didn't really look good at all. Didn't really get it done. Only 212 passing yards, like you said, no touchdowns. On the rushing attack, Josh Jacobs wasn't terrible. They got 81 yards on the ground, but just wasn't enough to get it done. And the Eagles defense, which has been one of the top defenses all year, continued to show that in this game at home. They were phenomenal. Just a great job by Vic Fangio and that unit. Offensively, they again didn't have to do too much, only 130 passing yards and 2 touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. I don't have him here, but I remember looking at the stats of Jalen Hurts with all of his playoff wins. And outside of that Super Bowl, those stats aren't really all that good. He has a very good roster around him that has allowed him to be capable of winning these games. We see Saquon Barkley get 119 rushing yards on the ground. He was, again, the Eagles' best player on offense. He is the Eagles' main source of offense. Only 1 catch for A.J. Brown. He had 1 book read as well. And Devontae Smith gets 4 catches. So, great game from that Eagles defense that propels them to another win. They moved to 8-1 at home. Another very good home team. And they have a matchup next week that I think they are capable of winning and could find themselves in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, and I think that Hail Mary from Hurts takes him out of contention for a good game in the Super Bowl. So in my opinion, he has no good playoff game. So too embarrassing. But we'll move on to the first and only good really game of this wild card round. The Commanders beating the Buccaneers 23-20. Jaden Daniels, the fourth rookie quarterback ever to win a road playoff game. Daniels was very solid in this game, especially considering we correctly predicted that they wouldn't have much of a run game here. It was very hard for them to run the ball. Phenomenal strategy from Dan Quinn, though, just to try to milk the clock out, keep the ball out of Baker's hands. Baker throws just 3 incompletions in this game, but only gets 185 yards because they just were not able to have much time of possession in this game. Baker's fumble after his defense got a red zone stop was really backbreaking. They got the stop they needed. They looked like they were going to be fine in this game, and then the Commanders force a fumble, and you get an immediate touchdown for them on the other side. I was worried about the Commanders as they kept getting into the red zone and not scoring touchdowns, but like I said, Baker's fumble gave them that second shot, which made it pretty easy. It's hard to give a team similar to an offensive rebound. It's hard to give a team a second shot. They're most likely going to make it. The Commanders did in this game, despite not being a great run defense. Washington did a good job against Bucky going into next week. They're going to need to do that again. Going to need to stop the run. They're going to need to stop the Lions in the Reds or score against the Lions in the red zone, which is a tough task they weren't able to in this game. What a moment though for Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in this league if he could stay healthy. My biggest thing out of the draft still stands. He doesn't slide well. He goes and he takes
Yeah.
hits. We saw him take a massive hit on the sideline in this game. By was it Diaby? I can't remember who it was who hit him on the sidelines, but he got hit hard. He needs to be able to stay healthy for his career. If he can learn how to slide, he's just so talented with it. He's a very efficient passer. He let's see before outside of like Lamar and Josh Allen, I'd say he's probably the best passer of the running quarterbacks. I mean, and
I don't hate
Lamar,
that.
look at Lamar coming out, and I think Lamar and Jane Daniels have a lot of similarities. Lamar coming out was not nearly this good of a passer as Jaden Daniels is right now. Of course, Lamar's developed into a phenomenal passer, but Jaden has all the tools. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. Just want to see him stay healthy. I want to see him have a long, great career.
Yeah, I want to see him have a long, great career as well. And this was a very good playoff win. The Commanders get their first playoff win since I think 2006. He was great in this game. Running the ball, he was their leading rusher. They didn't really have a great rushing attack with Brian Robinson Jr. He was quiet, Austin Eckler as well, but Jane Daniels led him in rushing yards, led him obviously in passing yards. De'Ami Brown gets a touchdown. We see Terry McLaurin get a touchdown, throwing it to guys like that. He was great. And the defense was able to do a lot of just holding the Buccaneers to a couple field goals. Getting that fumble recovery was huge, like you said, and led them to victory. Baker was solid in this game, 15 for 18, very efficient, 2 touchdowns. Got the ball to Mike Evans a lot, who was dominating Marshawn Lattimore in their old-fashioned rivalry, but it just was not enough. The defense couldn't bail him out on that fumble, and a really disappointing loss in a game that I think they could have won. But we've seen the Buccaneers all year, or the Commanders all year, be in very close games. We saw it the last couple weeks of the season, last week even. They got a game-winning touchdown as time expired, pretty much. A lot of game-winning field goals. Obviously, the Hail Mary. This Commanders team is very good in close games, and that's a little worrying for the Lions. If the game stays close, the Commanders just find ways to win games. You kind of just want to blow them out. So, nice win. Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback, actually gets it done, especially on the road, which is very rare to do. And He's got to be the number one rookie quarterback, no matter what, after this season. So great for him.
All right, final game here. Rams beating the Vikings 27-9. This was great to watch, honestly. An embarrassing performance from Sam Darnold and the Vikings, and maybe the coach of the year. I don't know. Let's see if Dan gets robbed for a third time. But Darnold took 9 sacks in this game. Some are on his O line, some are on him just holding on to the ball for too long. It almost seems like he's doing it as a joke sometimes. There was one where we counted it. He had like 8 seconds in the pocket and still couldn't throw the ball away. Rams came in and punched them in the mouth offensively. They were able to score right away in this game, put the Vikings on their feet. That holding on to the ball too long thing worked for Darnold for much of the regular season, but you get to week 18 in the wild card round, essentially 2 playoff games, and it just gets absolutely blown up. The biggest moment of this game, it was 10-3. You get the strip sack on Darnold, return for a touchdown from the Rams, then a failed fourth down from Minnesota on the next drive, leading to another Rams touchdown, and then you go from 10-3 to 24-3 and right before halftime, and that's just hard to recover from. Second half was pretty slow as the Rams were just trying to chew clock and get out of this game. Pretty amazing how highly regarded this Vikings team was 2 weeks ago, and they just completely imploded. Despite winning 14 games, I'm pretty confident to say this was not a productive year for the Vikings whatsoever. They just add more QB confusion after taking a quarterback in the first round last year. They're going to have the worst pick of all the wild card exits because they won so many games in the regular season. They're going to end up with the 24th pick. They're going to lose multiple assistant coaches probably in the free agency market. They have Cam Robinson, Bynum, Darnold, Aaron Jones, Byron Murphy, Tillery. Those guys are all free agents this offseason. I I mean, it's not a hot take because they were 14-3 this year. I don't think they're going to have as good of a regular season as they did this year, next year. But yeah, it's really tough to have everything go your way and then last 2 weeks of the season it all implodes. But they were frauds all along.
Yeah, they had four losses this season. They lost to the Lions and then the Rams back to back, and they do it again. They lost to the Lions last week and the Rams here. Four losses to two of the same teams, and one of them isn't even in your division. That's unfortunate for the Vikings. Matt Stafford looked very good early in this game. Didn't have to do too much in the second half. 19 for 27, 200 yards, no picks. He was good. They had a decent rushing attack with Kyron Williams, but just the defense for the Rams got it done. They've been getting it done a lot recently. They've been one of the best units since they got dominated by the Eagles a couple of weeks ago. And the Vikings just disappointing. The rushing attack wasn't there. Sam Darnold uh, was not good in the pocket. Took 9 sacks. Just can't have that happen in the playoffs. He was holding the ball for way too long. We were talking about how, I mean, he was just holding the ball for like 7, 8 seconds. No one was open. If they took away those deep passes, he's really not the best short passing quarterback, and they just was not able to get it done. Lost a fumble. That didn't help. Turnovers hurt, and the Rams defense and offense both capitalized. They win this game. It was moved to Arizona. Still is probably about 50-50 with the fans, but the Rams fans leave happy. TJ Hawkinson was decent for the Vikings, but 5 catches for 58 yards for Justin Jefferson in a big playoff game isn't what you need from the Vikings. So great game. My biggest takeaway is that this Rams defense is way better than it was earlier in the season, and they they could be able to give the Eagles a good fight for their money.
Yeah, I said in the Lions Vikings preview that we can let Jefferson get 120, we can't let him get 170, and he proceeded to not get 120 for the rest of the season. So
Yeah.
tough look for him. But we'll finish off here with our studs and duds for this week. My stud is going to be D'Amico Ryans in this Texans defense. They just came to play. Derek Stingley, he doesn't get thrown out much, hasn't gotten thrown out much all year long. He gets thrown out a few times in this game, comes up with a couple picks. Kamari Lassiter, corner out of Georgia, has been phenomenal in his rookie year, and he has a pick in this game. Then Eric Murray gets one as well. This defense came to play. There was a lot of shit talk about them going into the playoffs, from us included, about how bad they were playing. They shut everybody up. They go and they beat this Chargers team that had a decent amount of hype and beat them convincingly. So, shout out the Texans and their defense in this game.
Yeah, my stud of the week is Jaden Daniels. Rookie quarterback getting it done on the road in the playoffs is something that you do not often see, and he got it done. He was great in that game. Led the Commanders to another close win, and just a win in the playoffs is phenomenal for a rookie quarterback. So Jaden Daniels is my stud of the week.
Okay. My dud of the week is who do I want to go with here? I'll go with Sam Darnold. Another horrible game for him. Took a ton of sacks, 15 incompletions. He lost himself probably a good 25 million in the past 2 weeks, which is
Yeah,
that's that's a bad trip to Vegas even for like Dana White. That's a tough week for him and the Vikings in general. So I'm gonna go with Sam Darnold as my dud of the week.
yeah, he has to
Actually, no,
be.
can I change it?
I mean, I'm probably gonna pick the other guy if that's what
It's not
you're.
another guy I'm picking.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna I'm gonna change my dud of the week to the Vikings choreography team. I didn't see much dancing from them the past couple weeks, so I
Well,
don't know what
yeah,
happened to them.
yeah. I mean, you can't blame them. Then you got to blame the players.
Didn't see much dancing.
My dud of the week is gonna be Jordan Love. Another playoff game here where he was good in the playoffs last year, but in the back half of this season, he hasn't really been as good. Toyotathon, I think, is ended, so maybe that's the main reason
Yeah,
he
it's ended.
sucked. But
He
he
sucked
wasn't
in
good in this
Toyotathon
game.
too.
Yeah, he wasn't great in Toyotathon this year like he was last season. And hopefully it wasn't just a dud. He got paid a lot of money in the offseason and
Hmm.
really hasn't delivered yet. So I'm going with Jordan Love.
Okay. We will move on here to our preview of the divisional round. We'll start with the first game here. We'll go in chronological order, starting with the Texans at Chiefs. Texans were not expected to be here, but here they are. Chiefs are coming off of 24 days of rest since Christmas going into this game. One advantage I will give Houston, though, is they definitely got to be feeling good after last week, and they have more defensive talent, I'd say, than Kansas City, so that's definitely going to keep them in this game. Their talent on the outside defensively is definitely better than Kansas City's talent on the outside offensively. So I could see Kansas City starting slow in this game. I could see the Texans defense coming out and trying to punch them in the mouth. We talked about excuse me, how great their pass rush has been with Will Anderson. If they can get to Mahomes and stop the guys on the outside, they're going to be able to put up a good fight early. With the long rest, I expect this game, we talked about this, to be like 7-0, 10-0 Houston early. Kansas City is just too poised for this, though. Texans offense, I think, is going to struggle as their offensive line will get blown up by Jones in this Kansas City front, Karlaftis, all those guys. Texans are going to have to be able to use their defense to score as they did in the wild card round. And I don't just mean pick sixes like they had in that game. I mean being able to just create turnovers and put your offense in positions where they don't have to go too far down the field because we know this offense has not been great and the Chiefs defense is really, really good, especially in the run game. Chiefs have been bad at covering all year. I think that continues here. I'm gonna take the Texans plus 8.5, but I'm over in the playoffs on the pod so far, so maybe
Yeah,
fade me.
it was an unfortunate
Or
week for
maybe
you
don't fade
last
me.
week. Maybe you're destined to go
Yeah,
undefeated this
4-0.
week. We saw this game in week 16. Chiefs defense shut down CJ Stroud in that game. He had two interceptions, very quiet game, but they were still in the game. The Tank Dell touchdown was that play where he completely blew out his knee. So after that, the Texans offense just really fell apart. The Texans are currently 0-5 in the divisional round. They've never got past the divisional round of the conference championship. Only team to never make it there. We were talking a few days ago, 2019, this game happened. Texans Chiefs, 21 or 24 to nothing lead for the Texans in that game, and that's when Mahomes really started to become that huge playoff performer that we've seen from his entire career. Texans have never won a road playoff game, so they're going into Arrowhead, not a place you want to play. They weren't able to get anything going on the ground in that game, which is something that I think they need to do in that Week 16 matchup. They couldn't run the ball. They're going to have to in this game. They only had 84 yards in that game total rushing. If they want to win this game, they're going to have to run the ball. They're going to need to open up that field for CJ Stroud, allow him to get it to Nico Collins. Defensively for the Texans, they were fourth in the NFL in sacks. They had 49 of them. They need to get pressure on Mahomes. Uh, Even when he was sacked three or more times, though, the Chiefs went 6-0. Maybe the rest is too much for the Chiefs to handle. They haven't played in 3 weeks, but in the playoffs, we know it's just a different story. We saw it last season. Mahomes is 4-1 against the Texans. He has a 14-1 touchdown to interception ratio in those games, a passer rating in the playoffs of 105. He has basically a MVP season right now in the playoffs, 5,135 yards, 41 touchdowns, 8 picks in 18 games in the playoffs. So I think the Chiefs are going to win this game no matter what. It's just, is that too big of a spread for the um Texans to cover or the Chiefs to cover. I'm just gonna trust the Chiefs in the playoffs. Although I can see the Texans keeping it close, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs minus 8.5.
Yeah, I think it's 8.5.
Yeah.
Let me check real quick.
No matter what, I think
It's
it's
8.5, Chiefs. Yeah.
I can just see the Chiefs. I don't know. That's a big number for the playoffs, man.
You going with Chiefs?
Yeah.
All right. Next game here, Commanders at Lions. It was a good bye week for the Lions. They're getting a little bit healthier. David Montgomery, of course, coming back. I believe Ennis Rakestraw will be back. Terrion Arnold will be back in this game. Kevin Zeitler is TBD at this point as we're recording here on Wednesday. I hope he's going to play. The Lions are going to need him. I know the Commanders do not have a good run defense, but Deron Payne is a beast there up the middle, and the run game is going to change a lot without Zeitler in there. Hopefully, Mahogany can hold it down if it comes to that. Lions open up as 9.5 point favorites off a bye, playing Washington, who's on a short week. This was my ideal matchup for the Lions in round two. I got my dream scenario of Commanders, Rams, and Eagles to win here in the first round. Most of the Commanders' defensive talent is in their front seven, but they stop the pass much better than they stop the run, which is a very weird characteristic of this team. The Lions will look to set the tone early in the run game. If Washington cannot stop it early, they're cooked. They need to continuously run it with no success. That's what the Commanders need to force. They need to force the Lions to be stuck in their own ways, which they can at some points. Games where they feel like they should be able to run the ball and they can't, they do force themselves to keep running it. Commanders need to get them in that mode and be able to stop them when they're in that mode. Lions have not been great against running quarterbacks historically, but I do like what Dan Campbell said in the press conference this week when they asked him that who does really stop
Yeah.
running quarterbacks great. It's a fact. I mean, they just dominate in this league. You look at Josh Allen, Jane Daniels, Lamar. It's hard for anybody to stop those guys. I was impressed to see the Commanders win without running it well last week, but they had just 23 points, and I don't think that's sustainable. You have 23 points, you get a win without running the ball. If they play that same offensive game here against the Lions, they're going to lose. They have to find a run game versus tough run defense, but without some of the Lions' best players on the D line there, they have a chance to. This is going to be a really tough environment for a rookie quarterback to play in his second playoff game. I like the Lions to win this game by double digits. I think it's a good matchup for them. Their only possible matchup here in the divisional round where they're not playing a team they've already played. Commanders, Lions. I'm going to take the Lions minus 9.5.
Both teams are top five in the NFL in points per game during the regular season. Detroit averages 33.2. Commanders average 28.5. Both teams are very good offensively. Both teams have 3 games this year with no punts. We know Dan Campbell's very aggressive on fourth down. So is Dan Quinn and the Commanders. There could be a lot of fourth down attempts in this game. So if the Lions don't get the fourth downs and the Commanders do, that could be a big swing for the commies. But I still like the Lions. They're dominant no matter what. Uh, the Commanders defense gives up an average of 137.5 rushing yards per game, 30th in the NFL. We know obviously the Lions are going to want to run the ball with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, one of the best rushing attacks in the league. They average 146 rushing yards per game, sixth in the NFL. And that's the only reason that isn't higher is because they have such a great passing attack. They need to pass. Jared Goff will be great getting to ball to Amon-Ra or Jameson Williams, who knows? I don't know who on the Commanders defense can really keep up with Jameson Williams. Lions are just going to really run the ball. Commanders, last time they won a playoff game was 2005, 2006, so it's been a long time. This could be a potential revenge game for them, Jane Daniels specifically, and um, even the ownership group with Ben Johnson deciding just not go there. We see Dan Quinn get the job, and he's been very good for him. Jane Daniels was the first rookie quarterback in NFL history to throw at least 2 touchdown passes in a road playoff win. As a rookie, he was great in that game, great in the wild card round. But this Lions defense has been solid this season. They have been getting a little bit healthier, and I think that's going to continue. Outside of the Chiefs, there's not a team that really wins the close games like the Commanders this season. But I like the Lions to really get ahead and cover that big spread. So I see the Lions getting a dominant lead and winning this game easily. They know that they've been there before. They know how to win these games, so I'm taking the Lions minus 9.5.
Okay, next game here Sunday, Rams at Eagles. Rams find themselves on the road here in Philly in round two. This is two teams here with a ton of recent playoff success. Rams defense has been very good recently versus teams with bad offensive lines. The Eagles are not one of those teams, so I don't expect their defense to be as good as it has been. I think this is a game that Saquon will continue to bail Jalen Hurts out. I don't see Hurts having to throw up the ball a ton in this game, which is great for Philly. That's game plan. Philly does lose Nakobe Dean to injury, which is big. He was having a really good year. I have a ton of confidence in the Rams' offensive ability to score in this game. I think Kyron has a really good game. I think we see a similar game to Packers at Eagles with less mistakes from the road team. And I think we see Philly win this in a bit of a closer game, like a 3, 4 point game and a 6 point spread. I'm going to take the Rams to cover in this game. And as I'm looking at my quarterback rankings from last week, I would say now, without a doubt, Jalen Hurts is the worst quarterback remaining in the playoffs.
Um,
As I'm looking at the guys who have been eliminated, we still have
yeah.
Goff, Stafford, Daniels, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Stroud,
If you
Hurts.
take it on just this year, I think he's right there with Stroud. But
Yeah, if you take it, I'm just saying, like grand scheme of things, I don't think he's I don't think he's there. But you gotta have a quarterback to win in this league.
you do. We talked about the Rams are going to be coming on short rest here. It is going to be unfortunate for their travel. On two of the in the past 2 years, three teams have played one on Monday in the wild card round, and those teams have gone 0 and 3. Rams did win it in 2021, and they went on to win the Super Bowl that season, so they know how to do it possibly. But it's still unfortunate to have to play that Monday game and then go
Mhm.
around and fly all the way to Philadelphia to play on Sunday.
Yeah.
Uh, Rams just want to get back to where they were. They got to get back to that Super Bowl. They had a very bad game against the Eagles earlier in the season where their defense just looked absolutely terrible. And since that game, the Rams defense has completely turned it around. They've only surrendered 104 rushing yards per game after getting dominated by 200, giving up a franchise record to Saquon Barkley. He had 255 rushing yards in that game. They ran for 314 yards total. Um, the Rams defense since that game has just been dominant, like I said. In 4 of their past 5 weeks, they've held their opponent to single digits, and the only time a team scored more than 10 in that span has been Week 18 when they were resting most of their starters on that side of the ball. This is a different team than the Vikings. Obviously, the Eagles have a rushing attack that already beat them, but I think this Rams defense has stiffened up. I think they can be good. Offensively, if they can protect Stafford, I have a little bit of a solid day with Kyren Williams on the ground. I think they can keep this game close. We obviously have seen this Eagles defense be great all season as well. Fewest in points per game, fewest in passing yards per game, uh, fewest in point. Yeah. Um, if they Eagles can get that pass rush going on Stafford, like I said, and get to him, that could make it a long day for the Rams. But I like the Rams to just. We saw last week Stafford look better in the playoffs. I think that could continue. I think the Eagles win this game close, but I think it could come down to a potential game-winning field goal. So I'm gonna go Rams +6 as well. I think it's gonna be a very low-scoring defensive battle, and I can see the weather, maybe the home fans coming into effect, and just a late game winner.
Yeah, and you said about the Monday night thing. It's also, I mean, it's the same for the Commanders too.
Yeah.
They play Sunday night, have to go turn around play Saturday night in Detroit. It's
So
teams
yeah,
are getting screwed, but hey, get
a
a
little
bye.
less rest.
Yeah, get a
Yeah.
bye, get a higher seed, you get rewarded. But we'll finish off here. Final game: Ravens at Bills. Game of the century possibilities here. Two teams that have been playoff chokers in recent years. Ravens have dominated the Bills when they played earlier on in Baltimore this year. It's still basically a pick 'em, but the Ravens are very short favorites here. This is going to be a money line bet because even the 1.5 is swayed odds. So this is literally just straight up a pick 'em. Essentially, I think it will be by kickoff. Uh, Ravens pass defense was their biggest weakness by far this year, but they've been in the top 10 in recent weeks. They've been playing a lot better. Ravens have had the best run defense this year in football by a mile. I think it's by like double digit yards. Should be a big factor versus James Cook, who's been great this year. Buffalo is at home, and that, of course, gives them a massive advantage. Buffalo should be able to pass all over this defense, but I'm worried about their lack of a run game, forcing Josh Allen to be Superman. And he can be Superman, but that's a situation you always want to force a team into if you can. Josh is going to have to take care of the football in this one. He might have to be close to perfect. I am so back and forth on this game. In my opinion, I think it just comes down to Baltimore having more talent and more room to make mistakes than Buffalo does. I think Buffalo has to play a little bit more perfect than the Ravens do to win this game. So I'm gonna take the Ravens to win this game on the money line.
Yeah, this is obviously the toughest one to pick. We're still we don't know if Zay Flowers will play yet. He
Yeah.
has a chance, I guess, to play in this game. That would be a big ad for the Ravens if he's able to go. Biggest game of the week, the top two MVP candidates, the top two rushing quarterbacks in playoff history. Lamar Jackson last week set the NFL career postseason records for rushing yards by a quarterback. He got to 602 rushing yards on Saturday. Um, but Josh Allen took that record from him on Sunday, less than 24 hours later, and he has 609 rushing yards. So literally the top two rushing quarterbacks in playoff history. Lamar Jackson was phenomenal this season. First QB to throw for more than 40 touchdowns with five or fewer interceptions. And recently the defense has really, really picked it up. They've looked a lot better. Zach Orr and his defensive unit started out struggling, but they've figured it out recently. Since the Week 14 bye, the Ravens have played five games and have given up just 11.4 points per game. They shut down that Texans offense in Week 17 to 0 points. And like you said, in Week 4, the Ravens dominated Buffalo. The game was in Baltimore, but that was the Bills' worst offensive game of this season. Mitch Trubisky had to come in late just to prevent Josh Allen from getting injured. They sacked Josh Allen three times in that game. He has only been sacked 14 times this season, so that's very impressive. Josh Allen, he outside of that game, he's been fantastic this season. He was the first quarterback to have at least 25 passing touchdowns, 10 or more rushing touchdowns, and fewer than 10 interceptions. In that game, that the blowout did happen. The bright side for Buffalo's defense is that they were still missing Teron Johnson, Terrell Bernard, and Matt Milano. They have all those guys hopefully back next week. And will hopefully have them next week. But they still, no matter what, they absolutely have to stop Derrick Henry. He had 199 yards in that first meeting. If he has another big game, the Ravens should win no matter what. Since the start of 2022, home teams have gone 6-2 in the divisional round. Both of those two losses are Buffalo. Um, as much as I really want to pick the Bills, I mean, I guess both defenses prepare for mobile quarterbacks. Pretty much, they see it in practice all the time with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. This is just such a tough one to pick. We'll not even touch the best bets for this game, but
Oh, neither am I.
um, you picked the Ravens.
You're gonna pick. Don't even. You're gonna pick the Bills. Don't you?
I want to kind
You're
of
a
pick the
Buffalo Bill.
Ravens. I've just been riding with the Bills for most of the year, which makes me want to pick the
Most of
Bills.
your life.
That's just not true. I'll go with Bills minus or just whatever it's gonna be.
Money line, yeah. All right. So
You got the
that'll do it for
Ravens.
our previews here. We'll get into best bets, divisional round. So you lead us off. We're doing two each this time.
Yeah, only two best bets. My first one, I'm gonna go under in the Rams Eagles game. I think it's gonna be a very defensive battle. Under 43 and a half. I think it's gonna be a defensive battle. Both defenses have been great recently. Well, the Eagles have been all season, but the Rams have really started to figure it out. So if the Rams can slow down that Eagles rushing attack, I see this game going under, and I see it being close. So I'm gonna pick that.
Well, I'm obviously gonna take the Lions minus 9.5 here. I think they win this game by a couple touchdowns. They're too good offensively to be worried really in this game. I think the Lions are going to be able to run all over them. I'm concerned about the over/under being so high because I think this could turn into a rushing battle for both teams here. But I think the Lions have so much talent on offense. They get a week for an extra week for Ben Johnson to get all the players he needs ready for this game. Maybe some fuckery will go on in this game. I think we see the Lions get at least 31 to 34 points. I think maybe or 28 to 34. I think they end in that range, and I think they hold the Commanders into the low 20s. So give me the Lions minus 9.5.
I think I'm just gonna go with a very under weekend, and I'm gonna go with Texans Chiefs under 41 and a half. Could be another big defensive battle. I'm a little worried about the Chiefs offense getting hot and having that big playoff push that they do, but I can see their defense really shutting down the Texans offense and limiting them to maybe about 10, 15 points. So I'm gonna go with that under.
I'm gonna take the fun over. I'm gonna take Buffalo, Baltimore over 50.5. I think this game, like I said, I don't think Buffalo's gonna have much of a run game. I think they're going to rely a lot on their pass, which means they're going to be moving the ball downfield at a high rate. And even if the Ravens are relying on their run game, we know Buffalo is susceptible to giving up passing yards, so I think they'll be able to score a lot too. I know there's been a lot of games that we think it's going to be a shootout and it ends up not being, but I think we actually do end up seeing this game be a shootout. So give me Baltimore, Buffalo over 51 and a half. But that will about do it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We will be back next week to recap these games and get you ready for Conference Championship week as well as the National Championship recap. If you made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the links in our description for TikTok, Spotify, social media, and all that good stuff. And we'll see everybody in the next one.